Imagine this, humanity's survival just hanging by a thread, and you're forced to make these impossible choices that basically redefine what it even means to be human. Today, we're plunging deep into a series that explores exactly that, the 100. Our mission today really is to unpack how the 100 uses its setting, this high-stakes post-apocalyptic world, to constantly test, well, everything. Human ethics, the weight of power, the complex, often brutal nature of sacrifice. We're going to trace these themes right through the series, looking at how the characters change or sometimes how they break under just extreme pressure. And we'll be drawing on, like I said, that look at Clark Griffin, those chats with the executive producer, a really deep analysis of human nature in the show. So to really get a handle on how this whole human experiment plays out, we kind of have to start at the beginning, from season 1. The premise is pretty stark. It's 97 years after a nuclear war wiped out most of Earth. The last survivors are on this space station, the Ark, but things are tough up there. Resources are running out. So they make this desperate gamble. They send 100 juvenile delinquents, kids basically, down to Earth, just to see if it's survivable. And Earth isn't empty, which leads immediately to clashes with the people already there, the survivors, they call grounders. And right into this mess, we meet Clark Griffin. They paint her initially as this princess type. The idea she's presented as almost too perfect, a rule follower, strong moral compass, always trying to do the right thing, establish peace. A lot of that comes from her background, her mom being the chief medical officer on the Ark. You'd think that would be ideal, wouldn't you? Someone so principled leading the way. But what's really interesting is that her commitment to doing the right thing, it actually causes massive problems. Yeah, it becomes a source of conflict itself. Her idealism backfires. Early on, she insists on revealing the truth about how a character died, even though people warned her not to. Okay, and it goes sideways fast. Leads to this angry mob, an innocent person almost gets hanged, and the actual killer, who turns out to be just a kid, really ends up taking her own life. It just shatters any unity they had. Good intentions, terrible outcome. And it happens again. Her belief in redemption. She pushes for banishment instead of execution for some pretty serious crimes, which sounds humane on the surface. But then those exiled people come back, angry and seeking revenge, and they cause even more harm. It really shows how standard morality just doesn't always translate in these extreme survival scenarios. Sacrifice, that's a key theme. It's there from day one. The season 1 finale, Clark closes the dropship door, and it looks like she's leaving Bellamy and Finn outside to die. Brutal choice. It seems like her sacrifice, but she couldn't actually save them anyway. The real sacrifice highlighted there is Finn choosing to go back for Bellamy for Clark's sake. It's about the intent and the possibility of success, a subtle but important distinction. But then you do get a really clear act of self-sacrifice with Jaha. He stays behind on the dying Ark so everyone else can get to Earth. He fully expects to die. That's unambiguous. It is a very different kind of sacrifice. So moving into season 2, the stakes just keep getting higher, don't they? The lines of morality get even blurrier. The rest of the Ark survivors come down the Sky People, and that just adds layers of conflict, with the Grounders, obviously, but also with this new group, the Mountain Men. The Mountain Men, in their bunker, Mount Weather. Technologically advanced, survived the first apocalypse underground? Exactly. And what's really compelling here is that the show avoids easy answers. There isn't some mustache-twirling external evil. The conflicts are human versus human, driven by survival. The Mountain Men aren't just evil. From their perspective, they're trapped. They believe the Sky People's blood, or rather their bone marrow, can help them metabolize radiation, let them finally leave the bunker. So they start taking prisoners. That's pretty dark, but they see it as liberating their own people. It's a desperate measure for their survival. And this forces Clark into another impossible corner to save her captured people. She makes a horrific decision. She irradiates the entire Mount Weather, killing everyone inside. Hundreds of people, including kids, innocent residents who knew nothing about the experiments, and wipes them out. how do you even process that? How to analyze such a monumental, morally devastating act? This is where the Machiavellian angle comes in strongly. You could argue both Clark and the Mountain Men are justified. They're both using these, quote, unscrupulous methods to protect their own people. So morality becomes relative. That's what the show is exploring, this idea of a false portrayal of good and evil, where actions depend entirely on your perspective and what you perceive as necessary for survival. Clark really starts to embody that Machiavellian idea that a leader sometimes must learn not to be good. It's about protecting your people, whatever the cost. Not about personal morality anymore, but about leadership efficacy. Precisely. And that cost becomes incredibly clear as we move into seasons 3 and 4. The weight of these choices just accumulates on Clark, right? She gets the name Wanheda, Commander of Death. Yeah, and some see her as a hero for making those tough choices, where the ends justify the means. But the show emphasizes that she hates herself for what she's done. So it raises that question, can you actually be good? Can you hold on to that core when survival forces these kinds of compromises? It's the central dilemma, and you see it physically reflected in Clark. Her appearance changes. She's scruffier, dirtier, dressed like a warrior. That initial prince's perfection is long gone. It's replaced by this visual representation of her burden, her sins indelibly marked upon her exterior. Then comes in the second apocalypse, the ultimate test. She's desperate to find a cure, focusing on the Nightbloods, these individuals with natural immunity, and she goes to extreme lengths. Again, she forcefully restrains a Nightblood girl for experiments. She even contemplates experimenting on her own friends. This mirrors the Mountain Man. It suggests that she has, in many ways, become the very evil she fights hard to destroy. It's this brutal commentary on power, how the need to protect your people can twist you into the monster you oppose. It brings back Machiavelli again. Sometimes it's safer to be feared than loved. Leaders might have to accept being hated for their vices if it saves the group. The show really doesn't pull its punches, not at all. And there's another layer of sacrifice explored here, beyond just life or death. Clark has that line, "I bear it so they don't have to." It points to sacrificing your own soul almost, your morals, your sanity, your sense of right and wrong, taking on all the guilt so the others can remain less tainted, carrying the burden for everyone. And if we look at season 5, it connects to this bigger idea the creator Jason Rothberg talked about. He called the show Lord of the Flies writ large, meaning it's fundamentally about humanity's struggle with its own dark side, our mutual aggressiveness, the sort of death drive, Thanatos, and how often, instead of overcoming it, we just make it worse. And season 5 really leans into that, particularly with the dark year in the bunker after the death wave. Prymphia, the survivors are trapped underground, severe protein shortage, and, well, they resort to cannibalism under Octavius' rule. You are Wonkru or you are the enemy of Wonkru. Eat or die. Exactly. It forces this horrifying question. Is morality just optional when extinction is staring you in the face? Is evil subjective? That's the core of the problem of evil. But reframed through human behavior, precisely cannibalism seems absolutely wrong. But the show pushes you. Is it more wrong than letting 1,000 people starve? And there's this philosophical idea connected to thinkers like Richard Swinburne about evil being a source of knowledge. How does that apply here? The idea is, once characters experience or understand true evil, once they know the difference between right and wrong in these contexts, their choices after that become really significant. So Jaha and Clark taking the bunker earlier, knowing people would die outside, that's framed as evil because they made a conscious choice with that knowledge. But Octavia sharing the bunker initially isn't evil. But then her later decision to expel some of Sky Crew to make room for grounders is presented as a morally compromised choice because she knew the potential consequences. It's about knowledge and intent playing a huge role in judging these actions. Pulling these threads together then, the show paints a pretty bleak picture of humanity, just stuck in this cycle of violence. It definitely leans that way for a long time. Cycle after cycle of violence, revenge, tribalism. But there are glimpses of maybe breaking it in season 5. Medea's, she's just a child raised in this violent world. She's about to continue the cycle, kill enemies after they've won. But Bellamy influences her, and she chooses not to. It feels like a small turning point. And then they all end up on the Elysium ship, forced to try and live together again. And then there's Monty and Harper. Their sacrifice feels different. They choose not to go into cryosleep. They live out their lives on the ship, decades, finding a new habitable planet for everyone else. And their final message? Do better. Just pleading for humanity to finally break the cycle. Be the good guys. They sacrifice their lives, raise their son, die of old age, so the others might have a chance at peace. It's incredibly moving. It really is. So does humanity finally do better in the end? We get to the series finale and transcendence. Transcendence, where most of humanity just evolves, transforms, into beings of energy, joining this collective consciousness, basically opting out of messy, painful human existence to live forever, supposedly free from conflict. But not Clark. No, she can't transcend. The reason, given all the genocide she's committed, the weight of her past actions bars her from this ultimate peace. But she's not alone. In the end, that's the twist. Her found family, her closest friends and loved ones, they choose not to transcend. Apparently, that's a first for any species encountered by these transcendent beings. They choose to stay on Earth with Clark, knowing they can't procreate, meaning this is the end of the human race, biologically speaking. Yeah, it's just a strange ending. The source is really debated. Is it happy? On one hand, Clark isn't alone. On the other hand, humanity basically chose oblivion or extinction. And the interpretation that it's kind of dark? The argument is that the show, which preached against tribalism for so long, ironically ends with this message that maybe peace is only possible when it's literally just your small family left, isolated from everyone else. A peaceful existence is possible when everyone but your family is dead. It's unsettling. So, recapping this whole journey, The Hunter just relentlessly puts its characters and us watching through the ringer, constantly asking what it means to be human when everything is stripped away from Clark, starting as this idealistic princess and becoming the commander of death, bearing impossible burdens, to things like the Dark Year and cannibalism. It never stops questioning how much of our humanity we'd sacrifice just to survive, and if those ends ever really justify the means. It's a constant tightrope walk between necessary evil and just evil, and it ends with this tiny group, this chosen family, on an empty Earth. They rejected the collective consciousness, the supposed perfect peace, which leaves us with a really provocative thought. It really does. If the only way to achieve perfect peace and harmony is either to completely shed our contentious, aggressive human nature through something like transcendence, or to be isolated in this tiny non-procreating group, what does that actually say about us, about human nature itself, and whether we can ever genuinely progress? Can we ever really do better, like Monty hoped? Or is conflict just baked into who we are, forever part of our story? Yeah, it's definitely something to chew upon long after the credits roll.